Okay, this week I'm gonna actually expand on the yearly physical video. So I'm one of those people that pretty much the only times I go to the doctors is pretty much for the yearly physical and to get blood work for that yearly physical. Now, ultimately, that's a goal you kind of want to get to. So, however you get there is entirely up to you. Now, it's going to take several months, if not a few years, to be able to get to the point where you're like on top of your game because it took me like a good 2 years to kind of lose the weight, get my nutrition in check, and like start getting into mobility and get like pretty much a good foundation where like I had everything working. So 2 years are going to pass anyway. So like why not get your shit together and then that way you're not constantly going to the doctor for every single ailment or whatever. Or the rare case that something does pop up, you're able to pivot a lot more easier than like if you're constantly like every 2 or 3 weeks or even once a month you're constantly going to the doctor for like oh, I'm sick, I need this medication, or I'm like oh, I got this wrong, I need to get this checked out and everything. So that's one of the biggest benefits of actually taking care of yourself is that not only are you spending less time in the doctor's office, but you're also spending less money on through your insurance and like co-pays and like the whole healthcare mess that we have here in America and everything. So that if taking care of yourself like on like a physical level isn't motivation enough, why not use the financial reasons? So like instead of spending like $50 a month on medication that you might not necessarily need, if you take care of yourself, that's an extra $50 you can spend on like your hobby or whatever. You might be into Dungeons and Dragons, or you might be into like a board game like Hero Quest or like Monopoly or whatever. It gives you an extra $50 a month to spend on something like that and everything. So why not take care of yourself at least for the financial aspect, so you can have more money to spend on your hobbies or whatever. So the concept of like a yearly physical, it's kind of like a checkup and everything. So kind of like, oh hey, look, I need to kind of know where I stand and everything. So uh, it's the beginning of May, so like probably about like a couple months ago at this point, I went into my yearly physical and kind of went over like where I stand and everything. So like and so doing it, you can kind of get like a good old pattern. So like for me, over the past few years, like going over like with my primary care physician, it's like, oh hey, look, your thyroid levels seem to be on the rise the past several years. So like that's why you do it. So that way, in case there's anything abnormal, and like for someone like for me, like okay, well, thyroid levels are seem to be 10 on the rise. Like so, I got thinking like okay, going through things like, well, what do I do? Like okay, I'm physically active every day. Let's see, I do use pre-workouts. I drink coffee and everything. So those might be the three things. And so like for a couple weeks, like what I did is cut out pre-workout, cut out coffee, picked up like a thyroid supplement and started using like I used that for like a week, like every day. Then I started cutting back to like using it once a week because each tablet had like a good 10,000% daily value of the iodine, which is, it helps with your thyroid. So one serving is 2 capsules, so like 20%. So like I still take that once a week and everything. So after a couple weeks of cutting out coffee and pre-workout and everything, went back and started using that again. So recently, like in the last couple weeks, I went in and got the blood work to get that, and so I got a call from the doctor's office. Well, hey, look, everything checks out, and like I read the paperwork, and like I noted that like, oh hey, look, I had, like one of the three things that was also mentioned is like I know it's like a B12 deficiency, and like which getting back to kind of like how active I am. I'm like, okay, so like could be in conjunction with like the pre-workout. And it could also be again like how active I am like pretty much every day and everything. So like okay, so I picked up like a B12 supplement and like my primary care didn't mention something about biotin. So I'm like, okay, well, so they mentioned it, so I picked up a supplement of biotin, and so and with those two, like the same thing, like with iodine, so I'm like, oh, well, I gotta start like maybe I'm deficient, so like I started like using those like every day for like a couple weeks, it's kind of like, okay, well, if I'm deficient in this stuff, then like by taking this stuff like every day, it'll help get me in a sense out of the red and into the black and everything, using like a financial terminology. And so I mean I've cut back on that stuff, and so I usually use that's the biotin and like a B12 still like once a week and everything. So back to getting a recent call and everything. So like, oh hey, look, everything checks out. So but like seems that like your vitamin D is like a little high and everything. So I had noticed that like, oh hey, the paperwork said I'm vitamin D deficient. Okay, so like when I went in to initially to get the blood work for the physical, it was pretty much like getting close to the tail end to winter, and so I'm like, okay, well, it's winter. I know I'm not getting outside as much and everything to get natural vitamin D. I had been taking like and I still like up to this point, I still was taking like a vitamin D supplement of 5,000 IU's. So I saw that, so I'm like, well, if there's a vitamin D deficiency, I upped that, took it those two twice a day, take 10,000 IU's. So okay, so that jacked it up to now I'm kind of high in vitamin D. So now that it's kind of spring and I'm also getting outside more, I'm like, okay, so now I can cut back and I don't necessarily need to take that vitamin D deficiency, that vitamin D supplement. Okay, so now that's the whole concept of like not only doing the yearly physical so you can get the information, but by taking care of yourself, you're on top of your game and you can sit there and narrow down the stuff that like okay, instead of having like okay, I've got these 10 things wrong. Well, I don't know where the fuck to go and everything. By like taking care of yourself, instead of having those 10 things wrong that you don't know how to fix and everything, maybe you reduce it down to like one or two issues. Like for instance, like with me going in, adjusting, taking like a thyroid supplement. Okay, his levels seem to be on the rise or something, and like out of range. It makes things a lot easier to sit there and adjust and pivot and be like again, like with the vitamin D, I saw that I had a deficiency, so I started upping my intake of vitamin D. Oh, hey, look, now you're a little bit high. Okay, so now I can cut back and like you can like again, like I said, you can narrow things down and be like, instead of having like maybe you have like one or two issues and like there's like 10 different things that like well, it could be one of these 10 things. You could have the same issue and like narrow it down and be like, it could be one of these three things. So it's a lot easier to, in a sense, adjust three things than it is 10 things. So it's pretty much instead of being in like the stadium, you're in the bleachers when you're watching a baseball game. You have no clue. Like, okay, well, I know it's somewhere in here. You now narrow it down to the actual baseball field, and like, okay, well, now I know it's on the actual field, so like, it's going to be a lot easier to like that smaller area to search for something than it is to search the whole stadium that can house 20, 30, 40,000 people and everything. So that's ultimately the whole concept of like getting yearly physical in conjunction with taking care of yourself. So pretty much all the videos like I've done with like doing like the supplementation, the training, nutrition, sleep, working on mobility and everything. So now there's no such thing as perfect and everything. So like all you have to do is like ask yourself, okay, today was like a lifting day. When you go through like your week, maybe you do intense training 3 or 4 times a week, like a couple of days of like maybe intense weightlifting. You do a couple intense days of like cardio or whatever, or like how you could do it is like a Sunday Monday you get your lifting in. Tuesday you work on mobility, you're still active, and then like a Wednesday, what you do is you do your cardio. You could do sprints. Thursday you do get back into yoga, working on your mobility. Friday maybe you go for like a low intensity steady state cardio. Saturdays like a day you do yoga, stretching and stuff like that. And like each day, like okay, look, in order to stay active on top of what I'm doing inside the gym with weightlifting and like cardio training and like mobility training, I get out and do that 10,000 steps and everything. So now by doing that and like taking care of yourself physically, making sure you're actually getting quality nutrition and not eating garbage on a regular basis. Maybe you're someone that does that cheat meal once a day. Maybe you have a brownie like for dessert with dinner on like Saturday. Like, oh hey, look, I got everything done. My nutrition's on point the whole week. Okay, here we go. Here's like a cheat meal. Okay, so you're still on point 99.9% of the time with your nutrition. That one brownie every week's not necessarily going to hurt you as bad as if you were to eat that with breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day, and then like on top of having donuts and ding dongs and stuff like that. So not only that, when you do go into your yearly physical, it's going to narrow down the issues that you have. So like I said, like with the example I used with myself, you're going to be able to pivot a lot easier and make adjustments and like, oh hey, look, maybe like I have an issue like maybe my iron level is a little low. Oh, okay. So instead of like freaking out like, oh my god, my iron's low, be like, okay, my iron level's a little low. What you can look at what you're eating. Okay, so like maybe add in some like red meat once a month, once a week or something to increase your iron levels, or like do what I do and take an iron supplement and everything. You're going to be able to make those adjustments a lot easier, and you're going like I'm going to reiterate, it's going to be like narrow down instead of having to find out like fix 10 things, you're only going to have to fix 3 things. So that's kind of like a follow up on the yearly physical and how you can use it in conjunction with like staying physically active every day, keeping nutrition in check, and of course I forgot to mention like your mental health and like emotional health. Now, if like you're someone who does need professional help, don't hesitate to go get it and to make sure that you get that in order too, because that's just as important as like your physical health and everything. So this is kind of like a follow up video on yearly the yearly physical. Be like, hey, look, here's a good way for you to track your stuff, like another way to track your stuff and get in contact with like a professional. As my cats are running around, in case you hear the noise in the background, so even they're staying active. So this is kind of like I said, a follow up to the yearly physical. So that way, like, hey, here's something more for you to think about and like get in order and like, hey, just get things done and everything.